My stepbrother destroyed my college essay the night before the deadline, so I exposed his entire Ivy League application as plagiarized. He retaliated by hiring a reputation management company to systematically ruin my life until his ex-girlfriend found his payment receipts and we exposed everything at my fake mental health intervention. My stepbrother Jeremy's one mission in life was to ruin everything that gave me joy. He spray painted over the motorcycle I worked a year to save up for. He's given my dog away to a notoriously low-reviewed shelter. When I grew these rare orchids from seeds for a biology project, he literally poured bleach in the pots the night before the presentation. Jeremy got worse as we got older and developed a routine for getting away with it. Every time I confronted him, he'd run to our parents with tears and twisted stories. The motorcycle became him trying to help. The dog escaped through a gate I left open. The orchids died because he overwatered them trying to help. Our parents believed every lie because his dad paid for everything while my mom brought only debt. I learned to hide what mattered, but Jeremy always found it. The camera I saved up for months to start a photography business ended up in the pool during a party. Jeremy told our parents I was wasted and knocked it in myself. I was actually at work that night, but they believed him anyway. His dad lectured me about being responsible with expensive equipment. The college essay was my only shot at escaping through academic scholarships. I've been perfecting it since junior year, and every teacher who read it said it guaranteed admission. The topic was perseverance through family hardship, which felt more relevant each day. I password protected every file and saved copies in 3 places because Jeremy had never touched my schoolwork before. But suddenly, he showed interest in my college applications and kept hovering around my laptop. He asked questions about my essay and offered help I didn't want. The night before my deadline, I returned from my restaurant shift to find disaster. My laptop was open and the essay file showed error messages. Cloud backups were deleted and my USB drive was snapped in half on my desk. Jeremy appeared in my doorway with a soda and that familiar smirk. "Weird how technology fails when you need it most," he said casually. I desperately tried rewriting from memory, but couldn't recreate 2 years of work in one night. At 12:03 a.m. Zrania, the submission portal rejected me for missing the deadline. Jeremy posted about getting into the same school early decision. Something inside me shifted from hot anger to cold clarity. I wasn't going to be his victim anymore. I was going to be his destroyer. 2 weeks later, I was tutoring Jeremy's girlfriend in computer science when she logged into her email. I noticed she still had access to Jeremy's cloud storage from an old group project. She mentioned he never changed passwords and forgot to remove permissions. After she left, I checked if the access worked. Inside, I found Jeremy's entire academic life was fake. The folders contained purchased essays with other students' names still visible and receipts from writing services. His applications claimed leadership of non-existent clubs and volunteer work at closed organizations. He lied about being first generation when his biological father graduated from the same Ivy League. The crown jewel was discovering he'd submitted the identical purchased essay to all 7 schools. I spent 3 days organizing evidence into packages for each university. Jeremy's whole identity depended on fake achievements, which made him vulnerable. I created anonymous email accounts and waited until all his acceptances arrived. Jeremy threw an enormous party when 7 acceptance letters arrived, including his dream Ivy League school. His father bought him a luxury car while our parents cried with pride over his success. During his speech about hard work and integrity, he pulled me aside for another drink. "You know what the best part about getting into these schools is?" he said quietly, "knowing that some people just aren't meant for greatness." The next morning, I executed my plan with surgical precision. Each admissions office received customized packages from untraceable email accounts I'd created at the public library. I sent side-by-side comparisons, showing Jeremy submitted essays word for word, matching ones sold online. I included screenshots of the writing service receipts with his payment information visible. The volunteer locations he'd listed had been parking lots for years, according to the demolition permits I attached. I even tracked down the real presidents of his fake clubs, who confirmed they'd never heard of Jeremy. The first rescission letter arrived within 1 week. Jeremy's hands shook as he opened it, and his face went from confused to terrified. He immediately called the admissions office demanding explanations, but they wouldn't discuss ongoing investigations. More letters arrived daily as universities compared notes and found identical essays across applications. His dream school didn't just rescind, but permanently banned him and flagged his name in their shared database. Jeremy's father hired 3 different law firms, but even they couldn't argue with receipts and demolition records. By week's end, Jeremy had 0 acceptances and a permanent fraud marker following his name. But he also had something else, the need for revenge of his own. I never imagined how far he'd take it. The first sign of trouble came through my phone buzzing with texts from coworkers. "Did you really do that to a customer? Manager wants to see you ASAP. Someone filed a complaint about you threatening them." I rushed to the restaurant, my mind racing. The manager pulled me into his office before I could clock in. On his desk sat printed screenshots of social media posts claiming I'd screamed at elderly customers and thrown food. The accounts posting them were created yesterday, but the damage was done. "This isn't true," I said, examining the fabricated evidence. The posts used my real name and tagged the restaurant. "Check the security footage from these dates. I wasn't even working." The manager shifted uncomfortably. "Corporate already saw these. They're demanding action." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I have to cut your shifts until this gets sorted out." My schedule went from 5 shifts to 1. Without that income, my savings for community college would evaporate. Jeremy had found my new vulnerability with surgical precision. At home, I noticed subtle changes in how my mom looked at me. She'd pause before speaking, choosing words carefully. Her usual warmth felt forced. When I asked about dinner plans, she mentioned Jeremy told them him I'd been having anger issues at work. That's not true, I said, but she was already turning away. Jeremy showed us the posts, she said quietly. Multiple people saw you lose control. The genius of Jeremy's plan revealed itself slowly. He wasn't just spreading lies, he was building a narrative. Each fabrication reinforced the next, creating a portrait of me as unstable and aggressive. My protests only seemed to confirm it. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of the fake accounts, timestamps showing when posts appeared, records of my actual work schedule. My notebook filled with evidence, but who would believe me? Jeremy had spent years perfecting his innocent act. The next attack came through my remaining friendships. People I'd known since middle school suddenly stopped responding to texts. When I confronted my friend Marcus at his locker, he looked uncomfortable. Jeremy told us what you did to him, Marcus said. Destroying someone's entire future over jealousy? That's messed up. He destroyed his own future by cheating, I said, but Marcus was already walking away. Jeremy had rewritten history. In his version, I'd fabricated evidence against him out of spite. He played the victim so convincingly that even people who'd witnessed his cruelty began doubting their memories. At dinner, Jeremy performed for our parents like an actor on stage. He pushed food around his plate, sighing dramatically. When they asked what was wrong, he mentioned how colleges might blacklist our whole school because of what happened, how his friends were afraid to associate with our family, how he'd have to take a gap year to rebuild his reputation. I just want to move forward, he said, voice cracking perfectly. But it's hard when someone in your own family wants to destroy you. His father reached over to squeeze his shoulder. My mom stared at her plate. The silence felt suffocating. Later, I overheard them in the kitchen. Maybe we should consider therapy for them, Jeremy's dad said. This vindictive behavior isn't healthy. I don't understand where it came from, my mom replied. They used to be so focused and responsible. They were discussing me like I was a problem to be solved. Jeremy had poisoned their perception so thoroughly that my actual character had become invisible. The fake social media accounts multiplied. New posts appeared daily, each more damaging than the last. They tagged my workplace, my school, even the volunteer organization where I tutored kids. The accusations escalated from rudeness to threats of violence. I tried reporting the accounts, but they'd disappear and new ones would emerge. Jeremy must have spent hours crafting this campaign, but he'd always had time for destruction. My laptop started glitching whenever I worked on college applications. Files corrupted randomly. The browser crashed on submission pages. I ran virus scans that found nothing, but I knew Jeremy had done something during those weeks he'd hovered around my computer. One morning, I discovered my car tires were flat, all four, with tiny punctures that looked accidental but couldn't be. The repair cost ate into my meager savings. Jeremy drove past while I waited for the tow truck, honking cheerfully. At school, whispers followed me through hallways. Teachers who'd written recommendation letters suddenly seemed distant. The guidance counselor called me in to discuss concerning reports about my behavior. These are lies, I said, showing her my documentation. Look at the patterns. There's something odd about how Jeremy's dad immediately hired 3 law firms, but they couldn't fight simple receipts and demolition records. Makes me wonder if Jeremy learned his manipulation skills from watching his father handle problems with money first, truth second. The timing, it's all connected. She reviewed my evidence with professional neutrality. Have you considered that you might be fixating on your stepbrother? Sometimes stress can manifest in unexpected ways. Even she thought I was paranoid. Jeremy's groundwork was flawless. The restaurant manager called to say they'd eliminated my last shift. Just until things calmed down, he said, but we both knew I'd never work there again. Jeremy had cost me my job without lifting a finger against me directly. I started recording everything on my phone. Conversations, interactions, even mundane moments at home. If Jeremy was building a false narrative, I'd build a true one. But storage filled quickly, and I couldn't afford cloud space. My mom's birthday approached, and I'd planned to surprise her with a photo album showcasing our family memories. I'd worked on it for months, scanning old pictures and writing captions. The night before her birthday, I found the album in the trash, pages torn out and scattered. Why would you destroy your own gift? My mom asked when she found me gathering the pieces. If you didn't want to give it to me, just say so. I didn't do this, I said, but exhaustion made my voice flat. Even I was starting to sound unconvincing. Jeremy appeared with a wrapped present. I got you something extra special this year, Mom, he said, emphasizing the last word just enough to sting. She wasn't his biological mother, but he'd claimed that title while painting me as the outsider. The gift was a spa weekend. Expensive, thoughtful, everything mine should have been. My mom hugged him while I held torn photos, looking exactly like the bitter, destructive person he'd painted me as. That night, I found Jeremy in the garage, polishing his luxury car. He didn't acknowledge me at first, letting silence build tension. You're getting better at this, he finally said, but you're still playing defense. This won't work forever, I said. People will see through it. He laughed, genuine amusement in his voice. They already see through it. They see a jealous sibling who couldn't handle their stepbrother's success. Every move you make confirms what I tell them. Why? I asked. You already destroyed my future. What more do you want? His expression hardened. You took everything from me. Every acceptance, every opportunity, every moment of pride. Did you think I'd just accept that? Move on? Number. He stepped closer. I'm going to take everything from you. Your job, your friends, your family's trust. And the beautiful part? You're going to help me do it. I won't play your game. You already are. He gestured at my phone, recording in my pocket. Right now, you're secretly recording your brother in his own home. How's that going to look when I mention feeling unsafe? When I tell them I caught you sneaking around at night? My hand moved instinctively to stop recording, proving his point. Every defensive action looked guilty through the lens he'd created. The difference between us, Jeremy continued, is that I plan ahead. You react. I create situations. You stumble through them. I tell stories. You protest truth that no one believes anymore. He was right. I'd been playing defense since the beginning, responding to his moves instead of making my own. But something in his speech revealed vulnerability. He needed me to keep reacting. His entire strategy depended on my predictable responses. "Enjoy the car," I said, walking away. "It might be the last thing Daddy buys you." His confident mask slipped for just a second. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. Let him wonder. Let him react for once. In my room, I opened a fresh notebook and started planning, not documenting his attacks, but creating my own strategy. Jeremy thought he knew my moves because I'd always played defense. Time to change the game. I studied his patterns like he'd studied mine. The fake accounts followed specific timing. His lies contained consistent details. His manipulation required careful maintenance. Every strength could become a weakness with the right pressure. My phone buzzed with another notification. A new post on a community board, warning about a dangerous individual matching my description. Classic Jeremy escalation. But this time, I smiled. He didn't know I'd been accepted to a coding boot camp that offered night classes and job placement. He didn't know I'd saved enough for the deposit despite his sabotage. He didn't know I'd already started building something he couldn't destroy. Most importantly, he didn't know that his girlfriend had started asking questions about those old cloud storage permissions, or that she'd noticed discrepancies in stories he told her, or that she'd reached out to me about tutoring again, despite his warnings to stay away. Jeremy had built his attack on the assumption that I'd remain his victim, that I'd keep reacting predictably, that I'd fight him on his chosen battlefield. But victims can become strategists. Defense can become offense. And sometimes, the best response to a war is to change the entire nature of the conflict. Tomorrow would bring new attacks. More fake posts, more turned friends, more family manipulation. But tonight, I had something Jeremy didn't expect. A plan of my own. The coding bootcamp orientation packet arrived hidden inside a magazine subscription I'd ordered months ago. I'd arranged for all mail to go through a P.O. box after Jeremy intercepted my community college acceptance letter and shredded it in front of me. The bootcamp started in 3 weeks, offering intensive training and guaranteed job placement for graduates. I tucked the packet into my backpack's hidden compartment and headed to the public library. Jeremy's girlfriend Catherine texted while I was researching apartment listings near the bootcamp location. She wanted to meet about tutoring, suggesting a coffee shop downtown. I agreed, knowing Jeremy would find out but curious about her sudden interest. At the coffee shop, Catherine slid into the booth across from me with nervous energy. She opened her laptop and showed me error messages in her coding assignment, but her eyes kept darting to the door. After I helped debug her code, she leaned forward and lowered her voice. She explained that Jeremy had been acting strangely since losing his college acceptances. He'd installed tracking apps on her phone and demanded her social media passwords. When she'd refused, he'd accused her of hiding something. The relationship was deteriorating, and she'd started noticing inconsistencies in his stories about me. I showed her my documentation folder, careful not to reveal everything. Her expression shifted from skepticism to concern as she reviewed the fake social media accounts and their posting patterns. She mentioned Jeremy spending hours on his laptop lately, always closing it when she entered the room. We agreed to meet again the following week. As we parted, she mentioned Jeremy had been asking about my work schedule and daily routines. The warning sent chills through me. Back home, I found my room ransacked, drawers pulled out, mattress flipped, closet emptied. My laptop sat open on the desk, running a system restore that would wipe everything. I yanked the power cord, but the damage was done. Hours of bootcamp prep work vanished. My mom appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. She demanded to know why I'd been hoarding cash in my room. Jeremy had found an envelope with $2,000 while helping her look for something I'd supposedly stolen from his room. The money was my bootcamp deposit, saved from months of double shifts. I tried explaining, but she cut me off. Jeremy had shown them bank statements suggesting I'd been stealing from the family grocery fund. The numbers were fabricated, but matched close enough to real purchases that my protests sounded like excuses. She confiscated the money for safekeeping until they could investigate further. That evening, Jeremy's father called a family meeting. He sat at the head of the dining table like a judge, with Jeremy beside him looking appropriately concerned. They'd prepared a presentation about my declining mental health, complete with printed emails from worried teachers and neighbors I'd never met. The evidence was overwhelming, forged but convincing. Each document reinforced their narrative of my instability and jealousy. They proposed 2 options: voluntary therapy with a counselor of their choosing, or finding somewhere else to live. The threat hung heavy in the air. I agreed to therapy to buy time. Jeremy's satisfied expression told me this was exactly what he'd wanted. Control, leverage, another way to paint me as the problem. The therapist's office smelled like vanilla candles and disappointment. Dr. Robbie listened patiently as I explained my side, taking notes that probably read paranoid and deflecting. When I mentioned the destroyed laptop and stolen money, she asked about my feelings toward authority figures. When I described Jeremy's pattern of destruction, she wondered if I was projecting my own destructive impulses. After 3 sessions, she recommended family therapy. Jeremy volunteered enthusiastically, playing the supportive brother perfectly. During our joint session, he spoke about wanting to help me heal from my jealousy. He even teared up when describing how my actions had hurt him. The performance was flawless. I stopped attending after he suggested increasing sessions to twice weekly. The money drain would prevent me from ever escaping. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my bootcamp preparation using library computers. Catherine met me again, this time with disturbing news. She'd discovered Jeremy had been creating fake email accounts using variations of my name. He'd sent messages to local employers warning them about my unstable behavior. She'd found drafts of emails to the coding bootcamp with similar warnings. We spent hours documenting everything she'd found. Catherine just became the plot twist nobody ordered but everyone needed. Turns out dating the villain gives you you backstage access to their evil PowerPoint presentations and fake email drafts. Who knew? Jeremy had been methodical, creating a digital trail that would follow me anywhere. But his obsession with control had made him sloppy. He'd saved passwords in a document, thinking Catherine would never check his hidden folders. She gave me access to one of his backup email accounts. Inside, I found correspondence with someone offering to help destroy my reputation for the right price. Jeremy had hired a reputation management service, but in reverse, paying them to create negative content about me. The discovery changed everything. This wasn't just sibling rivalry anymore. Jeremy had invested money and resources into systematically destroying my life, but it also gave me ammunition. I started building my own digital case. Screenshots, timestamps, payment records Catherine forwarded. The reputation management service had left traces, digital fingerprints connecting back to Jeremy. For the first time in months, I felt hope. Then Jeremy escalated again. I woke to find my car windshield smashed. Glass covered the driver's seat, and a note tucked under the wiper read, "Sorry about your luck," in handwriting that looked like mine. Security footage from the neighbor's camera would show a figure in dark clothing, my height and build. The police officer who responded seemed sympathetic until Jeremy arrived. He expressed concern about my self-destructive behavior, mentioning the therapy I'd been attending. He suggested maybe I'd done this for attention or insurance money. The officer's demeanor shifted, and suddenly, I was answering questions about my mental state. Insurance wouldn't cover the damage without a police report confirming vandalism. Without it, I'd need $800 I didn't have. The car became undrivable, cutting off my transportation to job interviews. Jeremy's next move targeted my remaining support system. My high school guidance counselor called, voice cold and professional. Someone had sent her screenshots of messages threatening self-harm if I didn't get into college. The messages came from an account with my name and photo, sent to multiple school officials. She required me to attend mandatory counseling sessions or face intervention. The sessions conflicted with my boot camp prep time, but missing them would trigger larger consequences. Jeremy had trapped me in a web of obligations designed to prevent any forward progress. At home, the atmosphere grew increasingly hostile. My mom avoided eye contact. Jeremy's father left pamphlets about residential treatment programs on the kitchen counter. Jeremy played the concerned brother, offering to drive me to appointments and checking if I'd taken my medication, though I wasn't on any. One night, I overheard them discussing power of attorney. Jeremy suggested that given my mental state, someone should manage my finances and decisions. His father agreed it might be necessary if my behavior continued escalating. The conversation chilled me more than any direct threat. Catherine risked meeting me once more. She'd found something significant in Jeremy's files. He'd been researching legal ways to have someone declared mentally incompetent. The browser history showed hours of research into involuntary commitment procedures and guardianship laws. She also discovered he'd been in contact with the therapist before my first appointment. Email exchanges showed him providing background information about my supposed issues. The therapy had been compromised from the start, designed to build a medical record supporting his narrative. We copied everything onto multiple USB drives. Catherine kept one, I hid another, and we uploaded encrypted copies to secure cloud storage. For the first time, we had evidence of Jeremy's premeditation and manipulation, but Jeremy must have suspected something. Catherine texted that he'd accused her of sneaking around with me. When she'd denied it, he'd shown her photos taken from a distance of us at the coffee shop. He'd been having her followed, or doing it himself. Their relationship imploded spectacularly. Jeremy accused her of betraying him, of choosing me over him. Catherine told me he'd become frightening, screaming about loyalty and consequences. She'd ended things immediately and was staying with her sister. Without Catherine's inside access, I lost my best source of information. But Jeremy had also lost control over someone close to him, and that made him dangerous in new ways. The fake posts escalated to direct threats. Local community boards lit up with warnings about me. Someone reported seeing me slash tires in a parking lot. Another claimed I'd threatened them at a gas station. Each post included enough accurate details about my appearance and car to seem credible. I started receiving messages from strangers. Some offered help for my supposed mental health crisis. Others warned me to stay away from their neighborhoods. A few contained threats of their own, promising consequences if I came near their families. The coding boot camp called about concerns raised regarding my application. Anonymous emails had warned them about my instability and tendency toward violence. They required additional documentation, including mental health clearances and character references. The deadline gave me 1 week to provide materials I couldn't obtain. My savings disappeared from the envelope my mom had confiscated. When I confronted her, she claimed she'd never taken any money from my room. Jeremy suggested I'd imagined the whole thing, another symptom of my declining mental health. The gaslighting was so complete, I almost doubted myself. Without money, transportation, or references, the boot camp became impossible. My last escape route crumbled. Jeremy had systematically destroyed every path forward while maintaining his image as the concerned brother. I found him in the garage again, this time working on his laptop. He didn't bother hiding the screen showing my photo on another fake social media profile. The post he was crafting accused me of stalking an ex-girlfriend I'd never dated. He noticed me watching and smiled. The expression held no warmth, only satisfaction. He'd won, and he knew it. Every move I made only tightened the trap he'd built. Fighting back provided evidence of my instability. Doing nothing allowed him to escalate unchecked. But something in his arrogance revealed a weakness. He'd become overconfident, sloppy with details. The fake profiles used similar writing patterns. The reputation management service had terms requiring legal identity verification. Catherine had given me enough information to trace the payments back to him. I spent the next week at the library, building a comprehensive timeline. Every post, every payment, every email formed a pattern that revealed revealed deliberate manipulation. The evidence was overwhelming when viewed completely rather than in isolation. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Marcus reached out, apologizing for avoiding me. He'd received messages from someone claiming to be me, threatening him for abandoning our friendship. But the messages contained details I couldn't have known about his family vacation. Only someone who'd seen his private social media could have that information. He'd realized Jeremy had access through mutual friends and had been mining information to make the threats seem authentic. Other friends had received similar messages, all designed to isolate me. But the pattern was too perfect, too coordinated to be real mental illness. Marcus helped me reach out to others who'd been turned against me. Slowly, some began questioning the narrative they'd been fed. The fake posts contained inconsistencies when compared. The timeline didn't match when examined closely. We started building a counter-narrative, not through social media or public posts, but through quiet conversations and shared evidence. People who'd known me for years began remembering who I really was versus who Jeremy had painted me to be. The manager from the restaurant called unexpectedly. They'd investigated the complaints and found irregularities. The security footage from the dates in question showed different angles than what had been submitted. Someone had edited the timestamps and manipulated the images. Corporate was reviewing whether to pursue charges against whoever had submitted false evidence. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Jeremy's web of lies had weak points. Each thread pulled revealed more of the structure, but I needed something bigger, something that would expose everything at once. Catherine provided the final piece. She'd kept copies of Jeremy's emails to the reputation management service. One thread discussed targeting family members if necessary to complete the narrative. He'd specifically mentioned plans to frame me for theft from his father's business accounts. The implications were staggering. Jeremy intended to escalate until I was either institutionalized or imprisoned. The emails showed premeditation and malice that went beyond sibling rivalry. This was systematic destruction planned over months. I compiled everything into a single document. Every fake post, every payment record, every email showing coordination. The file grew to over 100 pages of evidence showing Jeremy's campaign against me, but I needed the right moment to deploy it. That moment was approaching faster than expected. Jeremy's father announced they'd scheduled an intervention. Family and friends would gather to confront me about my behavior and offer support for treatment. The date was set for the following weekend. Jeremy could barely contain his satisfaction. He offered to help me prepare, suggesting I might want to pack some belongings in case immediate treatment was recommended. His false concern made my skin crawl. I spent every free moment refining my evidence package. Marcus helped me organize it into a presentation that could be understood quickly. We created copies on multiple drives and uploaded backups to several cloud services. How did Catherine manage to get into Jeremy's computer files without him catching her earlier? The way she found all those passwords and hidden folders makes me wonder if Jeremy got too comfortable thinking nobody would check his stuff. If Jeremy tried to destroy one copy, others would survive. The night before the intervention, I couldn't sleep. Everything depended on timing and execution. Jeremy had spent months building his narrative. I'd have minutes to destroy it. The stakes couldn't be higher. Morning came too quickly. Family members I hadn't seen in months gathered in our living room. Their expressions ranged from concern to disapproval. Jeremy had reached them all, painted his picture of my instability. They'd come to save me from myself. Jeremy's father stood to begin the proceedings. He held a folder thick with evidence of my supposed decline. Jeremy sat beside him, playing the supportive brother perfectly. My mom wouldn't meet my eyes, but I'd noticed something Jeremy hadn't. Catherine had arrived with her sister. She'd positioned herself where Jeremy couldn't see her without turning around. When our eyes met, she nodded slightly. The intervention was about to begin, but it wouldn't go as Jeremy planned. Everything he'd built was about to collapse. The hunter was about to become prey. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Package delivered to everyone on the list. They're reading now. I smiled for the first time in months. The game was about to change. The intervention began with Jeremy's father clearing his throat and adjusting his reading glasses. He opened the folder and started listing my supposed behaviors, each one carefully documented with dates and fabricated details. Family members nodded along, their faces showing varying degrees of concern and disappointment. I sat quietly, watching Jeremy's performance. He maintained perfect eye contact with our relatives, occasionally wiping away tears that never quite materialized. His hand rested supportively on his father's shoulder, the picture of a devoted son worried about his troubled sibling. My phone vibrated again. Marcus had sent another update confirming that everyone on our list had opened their emails. The evidence package was being reviewed by 23 people simultaneously, including several family members currently in this room. Jeremy's father continued reading from his prepared statement, describing my alleged mental health crisis and the need for immediate intervention. He mentioned the destroyed property, the threatening messages, the job loss, all painting a picture of someone spiraling out of control. Catherine shifted in her seat, catching my peripheral vision. She held her phone discreetly, recording everything. Her sister sat beside her, also documenting the proceedings. They'd positioned themselves perfectly to capture Jeremy's reactions when the truth emerged. An aunt I hadn't seen since last Christmas spoke up, expressing concern about my behavior at family gatherings. She described incidents that never happened, conversations we'd never had. Jeremy had clearly coached her, feeding her false memories that she now believed were real. The room filled with similar testimonies. Cousins, family friends, even neighbors had been recruited to share their concerns. Each story reinforced Jeremy's narrative, building toward the inevitable conclusion that I needed professional help immediately. My mom finally looked at me, tears streaming down her face. She started to speak but stopped, glancing at Jeremy's father for permission. He nodded encouragingly, painstakingly, and she described finding me destroying my own belongings, talking to myself, exhibiting paranoid behavior. Every word had been scripted by Jeremy. I noticed the first crack in Jeremy's composure when his father's phone buzzed. He glanced at it briefly, frowning at whatever notification had appeared. Then another family member's phone chimed, then another. The room began filling with the soft sounds of message alerts. Jeremy's father tried to maintain control, raising his voice slightly to continue the intervention. But people were already pulling out their phones, curiosity overcoming social protocol. I watched their faces change as they opened the email attachments. My uncle, who'd been nodding along supportively, suddenly looked confused. He swiped through document after document, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. He glanced between Jeremy and his phone screen, trying to reconcile what he was seeing. Catherine's sister stood up abruptly, holding her phone toward the group. She'd pulled up the payment records showing Jeremy's transactions with the reputation management service. The amounts, dates, and service descriptions were clearly visible, along with Jeremy's name on every receipt. Jeremy's father demanded to know what was happening, but family members were already sharing their screens with each other. The fake social media accounts were being examined, their creation dates and posting patterns suddenly obvious when presented in chronological order. I remained seated, letting the evidence speak for itself. Marcus had done an excellent job organizing everything into digestible sections. The email subject line read simply, "The truth about Jeremy's campaign against me." Jeremy stood up quickly, knocking over his chair. He grabbed for the nearest phone, trying to delete the evidence, but his aunt pulled it away. His carefully maintained composure crumbled as he realized the scope of what was happening. His father snatched a phone from another relative, scrolling through the documentation with increasing speed. His face went from red to white as he encountered email after email showing Jeremy's premeditation. The correspondence with the reputation management service was particularly damning. Catherine stepped forward, holding up her own phone. She'd queued up the screenshots of Jeremy's research into involuntary commitment procedures. The browser history showed dozens of searches about declaring someone mentally incompetent, all dated before my supposed mental health crisis began. The room erupted into chaos. Family members demanded explanations from Jeremy, who tried desperately to spin new lies. He claimed I'd fabricated everything, that I'd hacked his accounts, that Catherine was lying to get revenge for their breakup. But the evidence was too comprehensive, too detailed to dismiss. His father grabbed Jeremy's arm, dragging him into the kitchen. Through the doorway, we could see him scrolling through more evidence on his phone, while Jeremy gestured wildly, still trying to explain. The conversation grew heated, with Jeremy's father's voice rising to levels I'd never heard before. My mom approached me slowly, her face pale with shock. She reached out tentatively, then pulled back, unsure how to bridge the gap Jeremy had created between us. I saw the moment she realized she'd been manipulated into doubting her own child. Other family members began piecing together the full timeline. They compared the fake posts to their own memories, recognizing how Jeremy had planted seeds of doubt about my behavior. Several apologized immediately, while others sat in stunned silence, processing the deception. Catherine pulled up the emails between Jeremy and the therapist, showing how he'd compromised my treatment from the start. The therapist had been given false information before I'd even walked through her door. Every session had been tainted by Jeremy's lies. The confrontation in the kitchen escalated. Jeremy's father emerged alone, his face set in cold fury. He announced that Jeremy would be moving out immediately and would no longer receive any financial support. The car, the credit cards, everything would be returned or canceled. Jeremy burst out of the kitchen, trying to rally support from other family members, but they turned away from him, the evidence on their phones more convincing than any plea he could make. His empire of lies had collapsed in less than 20 minutes. He cornered me near the stairs, his face twisted with rage. He hissed threats about this not being over, about knowing where I lived, about making me pay. But the threats felt hollow now. Without his father's money and family support, he had no power left. Marcus arrived with printed copies of everything, distributing them to family members who wanted physical evidence. The stack of papers made the campaign against me tangible in a way phone screens couldn't. People could see the months of planning, the money spent, the calculated cruelty. Jeremy made one last attempt to salvage something, claiming mental illness, saying he needed help, not abandonment. But his father had found the receipts showing payments to the reputation management service. Mental illness didn't write checks or plan systematic destruction over months. The intervention transformed into something entirely different. Family members hugged me, apologizing for believing Jeremy's lies. They shared their own suspicions they'd dismissed, moments when something felt off, but they'd trusted Jeremy's version instead. Catherine showed everyone the draft emails Jeremy had prepared about me, including ones he'd never sent. The escalation pattern was clear, showing how he'd planned to increase the severity of accusations until I was either institutionalized or imprisoned. My mom finally found her voice, confronting Jeremy's father about the dynamic in our house. She'd been silenced for years by financial dependence, but the truth had given her courage. She demanded changes, apologies, and accountability for what had been allowed to happen. Jeremy retreated upstairs to pack, but not before his father confiscated his laptop and phone for evidence. The devices would be thoroughly examined for any other schemes or victims. The full extent of his deceptions was still being uncovered. Family members began discussing practical support for me. Job opportunities were mentioned, temporary housing offered, resources shared. The same network Jeremy had turned against me now rallied to help rebuild what he'd destroyed. Catherine's sister, who worked in IT, offered to help me clear my online reputation. Jeremy's father confiscating the laptop and phone feels oddly convenient, like Jeremy wouldn't have password protection or encryption on devices containing evidence evidence of his months-long scheme. I'm curious why someone this calculating would leave such obvious digital breadcrumbs accessible to anyone who picks up his devices. She'd already started documenting the fake accounts for potential legal action. While I didn't plan to pursue charges, having the option felt empowering. The coding bootcamp was contacted by my uncle, who knew someone in admissions. He explained the situation, providing evidence of Jeremy's interference with my application. They agreed to reconsider, especially given the extraordinary circumstances. Jeremy appeared at the top of the stairs with 2 suitcases, his usual arrogance replaced by something hollow. His father pointed to the door without speaking. No one offered to help carry his bags or say goodbye. He left in silence, the front door closing with finality. The room gradually emptied as family members processed what they'd witnessed. Each promised to stay in touch, to rebuild relationships Jeremy had poisoned. My aunt, who'd shared false memories, apologized repeatedly, horrified at being manipulated into lying. Catherine stayed behind with her sister, helping compile all the evidence into organized files. They created backups of everything, ensuring Jeremy couldn't somehow destroy the proof of his actions. Their methodical approach felt like building armor against future attacks. My mom sat beside me on the couch, both of us exhausted by revelations and confrontations. She admitted to doubting herself whenever she'd questioned Jeremy's stories. His father's financial control had made her feel voiceless, but she'd always sensed something wasn't right. As evening approached, we ordered pizza and sat around the dining table where the intervention had started. The atmosphere had completely changed. Instead of judging my supposed mental illness, everyone shared stories of Jeremy's past manipulations they'd previously dismissed. Catherine revealed more disturbing finds from Jeremy's computer files. He'd kept detailed notes about each family member's vulnerabilities, planning how to exploit them if needed. Everyone had been potential targets in his schemes. The conversation turned to practical matters. My mom would receive the money Jeremy's father had confiscated from my room. The boot camp would start in 2 weeks, giving me time to prepare. Marcus offered his couch until I found permanent housing near the school. By the time everyone left, the house felt different. Jeremy's presence had been a poison none of us fully recognized until it was gone. His room would be converted to something useful, erasing the last traces of his influence. That night, I sat in my room surrounded by evidence of Jeremy's campaign and proof of my vindication. The notebooks full of documentation could finally be put away. The constant vigilance could end. The defensive posture I'd maintained for months could relax. Catherine texted that she'd found more evidence on the backup drives, but I told her it didn't matter anymore. Jeremy was gone, his reputation destroyed by his own actions. The truth had won without violence or legal battles, just careful documentation and perfect timing. My phone buzzed with messages from friends who'd received forwarded evidence from Marcus. Apologies poured in from people who'd believed Jeremy's lies. Some relationships would heal, others wouldn't, but at least the truth was known. The coding bootcamp confirmed my spot, waiving the deposit requirement given the circumstances. They'd reviewed Jeremy's interference attempts and found them laughable in hindsight. My future, temporarily derailed, was back on track. I started packing my own belongings, but with purpose instead of panic. The next chapter of my life would happen on my terms, free from Jeremy's shadow. The skills I'd learned defending against him, documenting everything, thinking strategically, would serve me well in technology. 3 days later, Jeremy's father discovered more evidence on the confiscated devices. Jeremy had targeted others before me, leaving a trail of damaged relationships and destroyed opportunities. Former friends came forward with their own stories once they learned he'd been exposed. The Reputation Management Service faced investigation after multiple complaints. Jeremy's payment records led to other clients who'd hired them for similar campaigns. His downfall had created ripples beyond our family, helping victims he'd never even met. I moved into Marcus's apartment the following week, starting fresh with minimal belongings but maximum potential. The boot camp welcomed me with instructors who'd heard my story and admired my resilience. They promised to help me build something Jeremy could never touch. My mom filed for divorce, finally free to leave a marriage built on financial control and emotional manipulation. Jeremy's father didn't contest it, perhaps recognizing his role in enabling his son's behavior. The house would be sold, profits split fairly. Catherine and I maintained contact as friends, bonded by our shared experience of Jeremy's manipulation. She started dating someone new, someone who didn't install tracking apps or demand passwords. Her recovery inspired my own healing process. The boot camp challenged me in ways Jeremy never could. Complex problems yielded to logic and persistence, not manipulation and lies. My classmates knew nothing of my past, judging me only on my code and dedication. I thrived in that meritocracy. 6 months later, I received a message from an unknown number. Jeremy had found work somewhere, starting over with a new narrative about his past. He wanted to reconcile, claiming he'd changed. I deleted the message without responding. My first job offer came before boot camp graduation. A startup valued my problem-solving skills and attention to detail, traits sharpened by months of defending against Jeremy. The salary would let me afford my own apartment and begin saving again. Moving day felt like closing a chapter permanently. My new place had security cameras and strong locks, habits born from experience, but mostly it had peace, something I'd forgotten could exist. The orchids on my windowsill grew slowly but steadily, replacing the ones Jeremy had destroyed years ago. These ones would bloom on their own schedule, protected and nurtured, proof that beautiful things could grow again after devastation. Thanks for getting through this story with me. Please like the video so I could continue to produce more content like this.